Welcome back to Kyle's Garage. Today I'm back working on the Model A and I'm going to try and use these two wrenches and this one piece of pipe to save $200 replacing my Model A exhaust. I want to get this thing drivable because I want to take it out this weekend to a Cars and Coffee. Let's see if I can do it safely. So basically here's the Model A engine that we're looking at. You have the exhaust manifold going down and over, and then it's just a single exhaust over here. And the problem here is I've replaced this clamp and put a new gasket inside, and that did not fix my problem. So what I'm gonna do is fit a sleeve in between the two that will hopefully cure the exhaust leak, because you can see the holes in the firewall and it keeps the engine from running right. There's a whole bunch of problems, but that piece right there is certainly worth fixing. So one of the fun things is I don't even need the wrenches for the back bolt. If I loosen the front one up enough, the back one doesn't have any tension on it. You can see it's all full of carbon. So here is that clamp again, and you can see it's got a little bit of a wedge between the two. It's a V shape, and the exhaust manifold has a little bit of a kind of bubble flare to it, and then the exhaust wedges up against it. And this is the gasket that goes between the two of them, and you can see here that this one is just all mangled up. And I'll show you what a good one looks like here. Nice and flat, and the flare fits in on the bottom side, seals from the top. Should work. So that is the exhaust manifold flare, and you can see how that gasket sits on this edge, seals up. So what we're going to do is fit this piece here. It's going to go up into the exhaust manifold, and then that's going to kind of fill that flare out. I grabbed a flashlight here so you can see this has just kind of ever so slight flare to it, but that flare is all kinds of chewed up. All right, so that got the exhaust all tightened up. I don't know if it actually fixed it yet, so I'm gonna come around here and we'll start it up and see what the exhaust sounds like. So I got the engine running here, and I've got a piece of paper, and you can see, and there you can see that paper blowing around. That's how bad the exhaust is leaking right now, as it's actually blowing on that paper. I think that comes down to probably like a B+ for effort, and it didn't fix my problem, so kind of a bummer. All right, so I'm back in the garage here. It's been about a week. I placed the order for the new muffler and got everything in the mail. This is the old piece, and you can see this flange is just rotted out. There's significant chunks of it missing, and a new gasket was never going to seal that. That slip joint was never going to seal that. It had other problems that needed parts replacement to fix. Now I could have cut it down and tried to reflare this, or cut off the 90 and put a new 90 on it, but when it came down to it, it made more sense to replace the entire piece. This whole exhaust was only at $182, so in the grand scheme of things, not a ton of money. I am going to still use this slip fit collar inside there. I think that's going to just be a little bit of additional protection, as well as a new gasket. So all of that fit in there, clamp it back together, should be no problem. This is going to go out behind the garage, but I'm going to roll under the car and get this all installed, and we'll see what it sounds like. All right, so that fixed the exhaust leak at that union connection. Now, the weird thing is, feeling around there while the engine is still cold, it feels like there's an exhaust leak between the block and the actual exhaust manifold itself. So I'm gonna try tightening down the bolts, but I think that should be a fairly easy fix. I've got to call it a night for tonight, but cut to a day later, I guess. So I've been over working on the Model A, and I wanted to come over to the workbench and give you guys a little bit of a close-up and an explanation of what actually went wrong. It's not the worst news, but it's not the news that I wanted. And the root of it all is in this manifold, actually. And essentially what happened here is there's only 2 points that the exhaust hang on the Model A Ford, and that is from this very base where it connects to the manifold, and one that's kind of right underneath the seats, give or take. All of that time and heat actually makes this number 4 cylinder droop down. And when this one was installed, it has what's called gland rings that fit between the cylinder head, well, the engine block in this case, and the manifold, and they help everything line up and make sure that nothing distorts super bad. It keeps your gaskets out, just helps everything seal. And this number 4 cylinder did not have one installed, and that's pretty common for somebody that might make kind of a band-aid repair, in that they have an old manifold, they're throwing it on an engine, and it won't line up. Everything will line up except that number 4 cylinder, and that's because it has drooped down and the machining no longer matches up between the two. So this was the gasket on that number 4 cylinder. So you can see all of this was just gone, just not even there. This was leaking, so really not working at all. Most of the other ones had a little leak there, a little leak there, kind of torn up. Not awesome. This one here, no real leaks all the way around. That's the intake port, nice, solid. This is one of those gland rings that fits in there. But you can see this cylinder, number 2. Number 3 had just a little bit of an exhaust leak as well. That's the intake port. And then this is that very rearward one. No gland ring in that one. And then you can see this is just a massive exhaust leak. There's all kinds of soot and gases working their way around. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a new manifold on order. I'm going to go ahead, go clean everything that I can, which is probably going to lead me down a dangerous path of fixing even more things that don't necessarily need to be done, but it's worth doing. And when the new manifold comes in, turn the camera back on and show you guys everything that's happening then. All right, so I'm back here at the workbench, and I learned some things since I left off. And that is mainly, if you see my exhaust manifold here on the workbench with my intake, my old intake on it, and then I also have new parts, and that's because I reached out to Ron's Machine Shop down in Ohio. They helped us out previously on our Redline rebuild Model A Ford, and so I called them up to see if they had the fixture to do the machine work on these 2 manifolds to get them nice and flat, to mate up to the block. And what they actually said was I would be money ahead to just go ahead and buy a new manifold, completely new. If I sent them down and had them machine my 2 pair right here, it would cost more than if I just bought the new part, and the fit would be about the same. So they ended up saving me a little bit of money, but I made sure I had my studs, a carburetor gasket, I went with a new copper one, the hardware to hold everything together, as well as the 2 bolts to match the intake to the exhaust. So I'm gonna set up a quick time lapse and get everything bolted together, get the block prepped. I've got everything clean, I just need to put the new studs in, and should have everything together and ready to run. I don't know, maybe as quick as 10 minutes, we'll see. So now I have a Model A with no exhaust leaks, which is quite nice. It sounds like it should. It's just got kind of that nice putter going on. And hopefully you guys learned something about even these heavy old cast iron parts can still wear out. It's kind of fascinating to think that anything that heavy would ever wear out. But for now, go out in the garage, work on whatever project you have going on, and I'll see you next week.